Hey,
Hi.
yay! Hey. Look at you.
Like, I love we're both surrounded by our libraries.
Oh, I know. And I'll be honest, most of the stuff is actually Chris's, especially the Lego stuff. He's a
Mhm.
Lego fiend,
Oh
but like,
man.
those are mine. And so it's all good. I thought it was a nice background.
That's perfect.
Hello and welcome to Changed for the Better, the Power of Arts in Education, episode 29. I'm Stacy Tiro, a high school performing arts teacher for over 25 years. I've taught a lot of amazing people. Now that so many of my students are adults, they'll teach me how, through the lessons in my classroom, they have been changed for the better. La Presidenta is in the house. This tiny force of nature was a Thespian staple for 4 years straight. Back in middle school, she had taken notice of our drama club when she came to see 42nd Street. I think it was with your eighth grade class, right? You were one of the Chestnut kids.
I was one of the chestnut kids, but I was out sick that day. So I made my mom take me that weekend because I was so angry that I missed it.
Ah, it was destiny. It was destiny. So she came to see 42nd Street, and then when she stepped foot into Spring Valley High School, she knew that she would have her sights set on leading this troupe by the time she graduated. Challenge accepted. So she came in that freshman year. She started with an understudy responsibility in our production of Rumors. She was a tap dancing cowboy in Crazy for You that first year. And that was with Alex Dominy, episode 20, and Elia Shavrova, who's episode 24. And I saw her potential early on as an engaged and really exuberant participant. So I appointed her to our apprentice board that year for her sophomore year, caps and bells, it was at the time, to see how she took on with a leadership position. And it was like I unlocked the candy store and let the kid run free. It was just meant to be. And sometimes you just have to open the door for that young person to realize what the possibilities of their potential really are. So from that point forward, she continued to rack up the experience points, both on stage and off, acting in principal roles for our fall shows and taking on ensemble roles for our musicals. And then she took on the dual role of being an actor in multiple roles in our Evening of One act and as the assistant director in her senior year. So from the student perspective, she ran the thespian show. Like she was the it woman, and she made sure everything we did ran very smoothly. When you know that you have a reliable student who can handle lots of responsibility, sometimes you just have to show them just how capable they are. And though it may have felt like it was a little more than she could handle to her, in the end, she always proved me right. And of course, she did all of that as the executive board president of Thespian Troupe 721. It was her destiny to fulfill, and she did so with pride and with joy. After she graduated, she passed the torch to Tendrina Alexandre, episode 10, and she headed out to New Paltz, where she earned a BA in interpersonal and intercultural communications with a double minor in linguistics and Black studies in 2015. Oh, that was a mouthful.
Yeah.
So now we're going to turn the questions to you. Please tell us, what is your name, the year that you graduated, and tell me a little bit more about what you do now.
So I'm Jessica Butler, formerly known as Miss Jessie Butts. President Extraordinaire. I graduated Spring Valley in 2011
Mhm,
and did go straight to New Paltz, where I graduated in 2015.
mhm,
Um, I originally went into New Paltz planning to do education, and I was convinced that that is the path that I wanted. And then the more that I was learning, the more limited it felt to me. So
mm,
I went for broad strokes, and I figured I can always go for my master's if this is still something that I feel like I want to continue in. Um, and then after I graduated, I just applied anywhere and everywhere that I felt like I could make a difference. And I eventually landed a role in a healthcare architecture firm as, yeah, totally different.
wow.
Yeah, and I was originally hired as a project clerk, so I was just doing filing paperwork. They joked that they wanted me because I was better at PowerPoint than like any of the higher level people there.
Sure.
And in my 5.5 years there, I went through 3 role changes and promotions. And by the time that I left, I was the studio project administrator for over 60 people. I'd filled in as the office manager when she was on maternity leave. And then when she didn't come back, I was standing office manager for a little over a year. Um, and that really kind of shaped me into when I was looking for next steps. And I've now landed at a workplace design firm where I'm originating the role of project coordinator for them because it's something that they've never had before. So I've been there since last October, and it is just an incredible industry field group of people.
Mm,
They're also passionate about what they do. They put people first. And that's something that I really resonate with because at the end of the day, like creating hospital environments was wonderful because you're creating a space for someone's best or worst day. Like it's going to be one of those two extremes. But workplace is something that people spend more of their time at jobs, even in this changing and like increasingly virtual world, than they really do anywhere else. So you want them to be comfortable and inspired and just do the best that they can. So it's wonderful seeing how people take the time to create those spaces and then also really engaging with our clients and our users afterwards to see how we can continue to improve and then also like what we did right. So it feels great.
Uh, I'm listening to you say, and I didn't know, where you were in your career at this point, and you're explaining this to me, and I'm like, yep, 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 that checks the boxes from starting, at the very beginning, ground level, the grunt work, to showing everybody what you're made of, and then how you can use the skills that you have to create and inspire. And I mean, that's just everything. That's a career well had.
Thank you. It's something I'm still kind of learning to, I guess, accept. It's very strange for me to enter a new space and then be trusted with A, responsibility, and B, the thought that I know what I'm doing. Because to this day, I never feel like I know what I'm doing.
Join
Uh,
the club.
yeah.
That is the definition of imposter syndrome. I've actually talked about that, with other guests. And it's a very, very common thing for everybody to go through. And honestly, I think it's also particularly a woman thing. Like I think sometimes have trouble feeling comfortable taking our space, which there's no reason why we shouldn't, but I think we do. It's just inherent and cultural. Um, but take your space, woman. You deserve it.
Yes.
You deserve it.
Thank you. I agree. And I've honestly been blessed to have very strong female mentors at both of my previous positions. Even though I've left in October, one of them I still get lunch with a couple of times a month. And the other in my new role is just like, she always makes it a point to tell me, like, it doesn't matter what your background is, it doesn't matter your accreditations, you are no less capable than the people around you. And like, I'm going to help you prove that to everyone. And just like, it's so wonderful to have that supporting voice when sometimes you're doubting it inside of yourself. And just to kind of like peek over and be like, I am doing this okay. Like, I do have a grasp on what's going on and I can get to where I want to be.
Yeah. Yeah, you can. And I mean, and you showed that in high school too. I mean, that was like the seedlings were planted then. And it's so you're just building off of that's your scaffold, right? That's like their foundation. And now you just keep building on top of that. And even, 20 years ago, when you're at the top of your game and you have created and inspired, throughout the world, you're still going to kind of feel that way. You'll just have a lot of years of experience to convince you that no, no, it's okay. I'm doing all right. I did good.
Yeah.
Well, so let's take this well developed adult brain, and I want you to look back and try to describe your adolescent self.
Oh my goodness. I think that adolescent Jessica was so overly concerned with just absolutely like bringing value and like pleasing the people around her in every way. And adult Jessica has learned that you can't do that. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't like burn yourself out for the sake of those around you.
Mm,
And it's going to be okay. Like if you're not always on. Um, but I came from a bit of a unstable household, especially in middle school and high school. My family was having a very long, drawn out divorce,
mm,
and I was the only child. So when you're in that unstable situation, everything around you is changing. And the only kind of like positive reinforcement you're getting is when you're doing things well, when you're bringing home A's, or when you're um, killing it at Girl Scouts or working at a horse farm, like all of the above piled in, that's when like you get the positive attention and when you get like the acknowledgement of like, okay, you're doing okay, then you tend to dive into that and make it everything.
right, right, right,
So
right.
I can very like vividly remember at one point, um, newly after being president, when people were coming up to me and asking me about auditions and where to try out and when crew started and yada yada. And these were people who hadn't been particularly nice to me previously. I wouldn't say that they bullied me, but when you grow in the same school district from kindergarten straight up, there's going to be things that stick with you because we were constantly evolving. And I just remember being like, okay, you can't be Jessica, you have to be the president. Like, this is a place that's welcoming for everybody. And just like, it's not on you to gatekeep or make anyone feel anything less than welcome. And that was like a really big part of who I wanted to be and who I wanted to kind of form our space into.
Mm,
And it was tricky to kind of just like bite my tongue in the back of my mind while still putting on the smile and like making sure that people knew what was going on and following up with them. But that was the job. And honestly, it only made me better as I grew because then you get to kind of set aside things that are more professional or title based versus like how you might be feeling about them on the inside or on the back end for the sake of something that's bigger than yourself.
ugh, that gives me chills. Because to hear, listen, the adolescent brain is messed up. And the reason why a lot of those kids were maybe not so nice to you is because their adolescent brains were messed up. And the fact that you were able to rise, I feel like your brain was maybe a little bit further developed than other people's at that time. And you were able to sort of see clearly, and this is why you were the president, and you were the apprentice president the year before as well. But that showed from very early on, the kind of people that I know I needed in the top positions to be able to achieve the vision and the things that I really wanted to see for kids. And so it was people like you who made that happen. And so I'm just really appreciative that you're able to articulate what your adolescent self was thinking, even as you were sort of grinding through those uncomfortable feelings related to your social stuff. So kudos to you. Thank you. So, what was something that happened in all of that space, thespians and such, that helped you to manage or to regulate your adolescent self?
There was a routine associated with everything. It didn't matter what was going on outside of the studio. I knew that as soon as the bell rang, that's where I was going to be sitting in the hallway until I got let in. And then in a couple of hours, I'd get myself home. But there was just like a routine and a set expectation. And okay, if I wasn't needed in the dance room, then I'd like wander over to the auditorium and see if I could help Matt with anything. And if neither of those things are happening, I knew that I could pop into guidance and sit with Maureen and like focus on like whatever she needed help with too, because there were just so many aspects that there was really like a space for anyone at any time. And I loved that because it was so hard to find a place where it felt like I belonged and where just showing up was enough for you to be welcomed into something. You didn't have to come in with like exceptional skill. All you had to come in with was like a willingness to learn and listen and like be respectful of those around you. And that is not a ground level expectation that's found in many places, especially like in tumultuous teenage years. So it was really nice to kind of have like that expectation and then to be valued for it. Um, because you did give me so many opportunities to really like step up and prove myself. And I was mentored by so many people along the way, even from sophomore year. Lindsay Strasser, Kristen Santos, like that whole board really just took me and ran with me. And I was like, there were jokes because I was the baby. I was the sophomore, like hanging out with all the seniors, but like they were all just such incredible people who managed so many different aspects of things. And it made it much more realistic for me to be like, well, they can do all of this. Like, why can't I? Well, what do I have? What do they have that I don't? Like, there's no real difference.
Right.
So,
And yeah, everybody brings their own stuff to the table, and it is nice to have that space to like say, well, what is it that I have to bring to the table? What are the things that are there that maybe I don't really realize? I love about the organization is that it is so fluid, and that, we can send a kid over to crew and say, hey, go do something, ask Matt what something you can do, go. And then you come to the rehearsal studio and you're kind of dabbling in a scene. That fluidity is what makes kids most easily figure out what they like and what they don't like. Both things are true. So what are some of the lessons that you learn there that you think about or that you use today?
figure it out. That was the biggest guiding principle was just like figure it out. Whether figuring it out meant like we need money,
Mhm.
so hustle and hold a dozen bake sales, or whether it meant this is the costume room and the props that we have available, and how do we get into medieval Pippiny times based on what we have here, and how do we make fire out of paper? Like you figure it out. And everyone was so willing to collaborate and dive in and share their voices and their opinions. And one of the things I loved is there was no ego. It was always best idea wins. And you always had a voice. So it didn't matter who you were when we were doing notes during Hell Week, or whether we were in the studio and people had suggestions just about what they thought might work best. Like it was always a safe, open space to air them. And then if they didn't work out, that was completely fine. We figure out something else. But it was just, I mean, I can remember on Fame, we had like all of the blocking set. And then when we got on stage, we were like so cramped in with the teeny tiny stage. They're like, okay, you go up the stairs. Okay, you're going to be over there. And we're like, okay, just doing some kicks on a staircase now. And this is fine. But you do it and you figure it out. And it was just really great.
That is the hallmark of what we do. Just go, I don't know, figure it out. We'll figure it out. We'll make that happen.
That's
No,
what
it's
that
so true. That example of going from a studio space, which doesn't feel like it should be much, it's bigger. But then you get to the stage where there's, a set piece and, everything and curtains and backstage stuff. And it's like, oh, how is this actually going to fit? Right. Yes. Figure it out.
even and I like vividly remember when we had another part of fame was there's all the set changes super quick in between hallway scenes. So we just threw like Igor and Eric in flannels and we're like, okay, you sit in the background on these stairs because you have to move them like 3 different times. And they were like, am I crew? Am I cast? We're like, you are both. You are just helping.
You're a little bit of
Yeah,
both. I love
little
that.
bit.
Yeah. And so, we just did a Charlie Brown. That was our first like back on stage, musical. And we had this one young woman, fantastic girl, and she was on crew. She was like crew all the way, didn't, was like this. And we had this scene, called The Kite. And so, we had a couple of the dancers, dancing with these kites. But there was like this sort of magical moment, that I was like, "Oh, can you and she was like, "What?" It turned out to be, like, the greatest thing that ever happened in her life. I
Oh,
was like, "Yay!" Just go down, go down, we'll figure it out, it's all good. Yeah,
yeah. Ah,
yeah.
that's the magic.
Magic of theater, it is. So how do you think that you have changed since you graduated high school?
I think that I'm much more comfortable in accepting that I can't do everything,
Mm,
because I was so convinced that I knew exactly who I was back when I was 17, 18 years old. And I saw a life and a future and an everything for myself that in so many ways is very different from where I am now. And I couldn't be happier for it.
mm,
And back then, like I really thought that I knew my entire path forward and everything that I was going to do and every single step. And whether it was personal changes or circumstances or what have you that popped up that interrupted, kept me from getting there, or just like made me see a different path that was worth taking. It feels so good to kind of accept that, like, this is where I am right now. I don't have a crystal ball, and where I'm going to be tomorrow and where I'm going to be from 5 years from now is exactly where I need to be then. So that's that acceptance was like a big part of figuring things out. And a lot of that happened when I was away at college because it was a very different world than what I was used to.
mm,
Um, I was a Chestnut Ridge kid my whole life, and I lived in Pearl River, went to school in East Ramapo, right on the border.
mm,
So I knew everybody in my town. I could walk like through Main Street, and it's like you're waving to the karate master and the butcher and like everyone. And
mm.
then you get like dropped off on a campus, and there's no one. There were two people from Spring Valley who were there with me, and I was literally running to their rooms constantly, and I was just like, I just need to see someone I know. Like,
Connection. I need to connect. Well, because you spent 4 years connecting with people in the best way. And then like that's not there anymore. And like, now what do I do with myself? Oh,
yeah.
oh.
It's so funny too. I can think back to when I was a freshman at New Paltz. Maureen had to drive into New Paltz to like drop something off or pick something up for the production. And she texted me and she was just like, "Do you want to ride back to Valley?" And I was like,
Oh.
and I remember we got to the school with her. It was opening night, or I think it was Friday night.
Mhm,
And me and her are like in the cafeteria figuring things out. And I go to cut through the auditorium, and you have everyone sitting in the audience giving like some kind of like pep talk or whatever. And I open the doors, it just goes like dead silent. And then I'm like, oh, I gotta get out of here. And then there's just like screaming. And then all of the people are running to me and hugging. And it was just this immediate sense of like family and just love. And like, it's so good to see you. And I was like, oh man, that's special. Like
La
not everyone.
Presidente is in the house.
But it truly not everyone and everywhere gets that. Like even other people I know who've had drama experiences, theater is always a family in some sense, but it was so different and so connected, the way that we were.
Yeah.
And I'm sure like continue to be because I hear about it secondhand now.
Yeah. Well, we certainly try, and I think, we've evolved in certain ways, but I think the most important things that you remember, those are the values that I hold really close to my heart, and I try and make sure that we continue that, even if some traditions change, we have new things that come in that we're trying out. But that's like all the makeup, it's like
Yeah.
that stuff. The heart of the matter is we want to come to a place where we all feel comfortable, where we can bring people in and they can feel comfortable trying new things and figuring things out, and that's the core of who we are.
Yeah. And
Mm.
I love that, like, it always has been and will continue to be that kind of way.
That's that's my plan. So what would your now Jessie B adult self tell your high school Jessie B self now to help ease the way?
It's okay to ask for help. You
Mm,
don't have to always have all of the answers all of the time. It is no one person can. We are human. We are not machine. We are not omnipotent. Like,
mm,
it is okay to recognize when you need a little bit more, whether it's support or love or time or space. If you can recognize what you need, and take the time to give it to yourself, then you're going to be able to give back so much more. But if all you do is keep burning out and like you're gonna hit a point where then you're gonna get resentful and not be doing your best work and it's only gonna hurt you.
right,
So,
right. Did you ever feel like that you burnt out and you were like, I can't do this anymore? And
oh yeah.
mm,
Senior year, I was president of Thespians, but I was also president of Reality Check GO. I was working on my gold award. I was working at the horse farm, volunteering at the Penguin Rep, trying to get into colleges. Um, and just I took on everything. And over winter break, I had like a weekend where I couldn't make myself get out of bed. And
mm,
I was just like, I need to sleep and I need to not move. And I did work at a horse farm for like the majority of, I think since I was 12 or 13.
mm,
And in the winter, you do like weekend feedings and stuff. And I just remember calling one of my friends who lived in Jersey and I was like, I can't get to the barn. I can't do it. And they were like, okay, I'll go. It's fine. It was just like, Mom, we gotta go. And like hollering down the steps. And it was just like a really beautiful moment where I was like, okay, like I will sleep and I will feel better when I get to the other side of that and I wake up and I can like start doing things again.
yeah.
But
So
eh,
you've learned to take those breaks more periodically, more
oh
regularly.
yeah. And just like making sure I have me time where I'm not expected to like be on or like tuned into anybody. Like I start my day, I'll read out on the balcony for half an hour before I commute to work, or I make sure like when I come home, I always light a candle. I think part of that stems from never being able to light candles when I was a child. Um, and now I'm like, I have like a half a dozen of them throughout the house at all times. But there is something like beautiful about just like focusing on the flame and the really pleasant smell and like it's a warmth and a calm. So finding those teeny tiny rituals and giving yourself even just like the 30 seconds to tune into them has been so helpful.
And we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. So what is something that you're grappling with now? What are you struggling with in this moment?
Accepting things that you can't control. And I feel like maybe that's a bit of a cop out answer, but it's definitely the truth.
Mm,
There has been a lot of change in the past 2 years, in the past 5 years, and what have you. And there is so much that just you can't do anything about it, and you can't control the storm that's outside. You got to control like what's going on inside. So accepting the things that I can't control has been a big recent focus of myself, and then trying to kind of like mitigate the ones that I can, which is why I started like being more mindful and taking time for myself and focusing on that. It's a way to deal with the fact that if I start thinking about everything that I have no control over, all I'm going to do is sink myself down real low.
right.
And be a little bit useless. So I'm trying to kind of keep cognizant of how I'm feeling, as well as like acknowledging that these are the things that I can do something about. And it's okay that there are more things that I can't do anything about.
Mm. It's hard, but it's true. And I
Mm.
think the closer, I don't know that we can ever, unless we're a Buddhist monk, I don't think we can fully accept that. But I think we can get closer to it and more regular about it, where we go, it like wreck it, like when something happens and your initial response is, ah, that sort of like panicky feeling. We go, wait, wait, wait. Is there something I can actually do? No? Okay, then it's there. Let it be. Like,
Mhm.
and I think that can help us, that practice, because it's practice, can really help us to find a little more peace in our hearts.
Yeah.
And we can become useful in other ways.
Mhm.
Yeah. Tell me one thing that you miss about your high school self, and then one thing that's gotten better as an adult.
I think that I used to be more open in high school, and I used to kind of be like the person who was comfortable, like reaching out and doing the welcoming and like letting absolutely everyone in every way possible. And there are things about that that are incredibly admirable and really, really great. And then there's the part of it that leads to burnout and to not prioritizing yourself and like letting you kind of recoup from that. But man, I think back to it and it's like now, if I was to try to do outside of like work and immediate family obligations, I'm like one or two small, I have book club and I have like the farmer's market that I'm committed to. And I'm like, if I tried to do more than that right now, I don't think that I could. But back in high school, I did everything because it was there and it was in front of me. And I had like a little bit of more freedom with my time and structure and my expectations to just like do the things.
Try.
Eh, yeah, that was so fun and that was so freeing, and it really kinda helped me figure out a lot about myself and what I did truly enjoy and what I was capable of.
And
Um,
I think it was also a good distraction from the stuff that was like you're processing and not like feeling out of control, not knowing. So these were all things that you could control and you could be a part
mhm.
of, and you could be effective and creative and all those things that you valued.
Yeah,
Um,
that's exactly it.
so what's one thing that you think has gotten better?
I am proud of myself. I think the most personal growth that I've had is in kind of the realm of accepting that just because someone doesn't see things the same way that you do doesn't make them a bad person.
Mhm.
And I've had a lot of practice with that in the last couple of years and coming to terms with what I am and am not willing to accept from those around me. But just recognizing that just because we don't see eye to eye on absolutely everything, it doesn't make you an inherently terrible, bad person. It just means that you're coming from a different place and you have different lived experiences and you have formed different opinions based on the knowledge that you have. And the best thing that I can ask for is that like we can coexist peacefully. And if it's something we can have a conversation about to foster those conversations in a way that hopefully can broaden my perspective, but also broaden someone who perhaps I'm not seeing eye to eye with or agreeing with quite on the same page. Um, and just like having a little bit of patience in that area because it used to be very black and white to me. Hey, if this is what you're telling me and it's not the way that I'm viewing this situation, then you are wrong and I am right. And coming to terms with it's like, no, everything is gray. Pretty much everything that's out there is in some shade of gray. Um, and just because we're not coming at it from the same place or coming to the same conclusion doesn't make you a bad person or me a bad person. It's all relative in what we do with it.
Exactly. There is no black and white. And I think anybody who must see things in black and white is just too uncomfortable to see the gray,
Yeah.
because it's not concrete. It does not feel concrete. And we need to feel concrete sometimes. We need to feel like I know what's going on. These are the parameters of my world. And it's just I feel like we just need to be happy in the being a little uncomfortable.
Mhm.
It's okay to just kind of exist in a weird space. And you grow out of that. But a lot of people find that difficult to do. So,
One of the best things one of my college professors started every one of his classes with on syllabus day was if you are in like any kind of social class, social justice or just like sociology, etc. class, and you are comfortable, you are being lied to. And that was the blanket statement across the top of all of his syllabi. And it just stuck with me. And I was like, okay, like either you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable,
Mhm.
or like you have to accept that you're gonna have smaller conversations than perhaps like you could be having. So that was just a really beautiful perspective.
Yes, yes. And listen, I've done a lot of learning, how to live in the discomfort. Because really, there's discomfort every single day of your life to varying degrees. Sometimes it's like not a big deal, and you don't even register it, and sometimes it's like the big stuff. And when you can accept those feelings of discomfort, you go, okay, where am I going to go with this now? Let's see what happens. I'll be on the other side of it some other time.
Mhm.
It's coming. More comfort's coming.
Yeah, and that's it too, like the reminder of like it's temporary. Like whatever you're feeling in the moment, it's temporary and it's gonna pass and you're gonna be okay.
That'd be okay. Well, of course, that dovetails right into my next question, which is if you could give a piece of sage advice to high school students now, what would it be?
Oh man.
I know. So we just actually said a lot. So
We did. Like feeling a little saged out, but I think that it's like more important to try things if you have any inkling of interest in them, because that's the kind of stuff that you're going to be questioning later on down the road. You're not going to like remember feeling like a fool for like trying this club or doing like checking out dance if it's something that you're interested in, or staying after for debate, or like poking around at what Valley has to offer. Um, but what is likely to happen is you're going to be in your late 20s and someone's going to be bringing stuff up and you're like, man, I had the option to do that. I had the opportunity to like try that out and I didn't. And now I don't know that I have like the time or the inclination to.
Mhm.
So just like diving in and kind of like trying things across the gauntlet, I feel is something that's important. I'm 29 now and I'm starting my first Dungeons and Dragons campaign. So like
Fun.
it's just like you always gotta keep doing the new things because that's like you can try it and not like it, and that's completely fine. But if you don't try it, you're not gonna know if you don't like it.
Right. How would you know? How would you know?
Yeah.
They're like, "Oh, that's not for me." I'm like, "How do you know it's not for you?
Yeah.
Because somebody told you so? Why are they the expert on these things?
Mm-mm.
They're not.
And
You are. Figure it out."
uh-huh. So knock it till you try it. It's funny too, because like growing up, my stepmom used to do this thing called the no thank you taste. And
Mhm.
whatever she like made for dinner or what have you, like I had to have one bite and it was like a no thank you taste just to be like, try it. If you'd like it, great. And if you don't, also great. But that's how at like 6 years old, I developed a love for sushi. That is like my major food group now. And like over the years, how I've like been testing spicy food. I still won't say that I am the expert on it, but like all just like various cuisines and things that I otherwise would have just been like, no, I don't think I like that at all. But I tried it and then I did.
But something you love, and you have a variety of things that you love.
Mm,
Ah,
yeah.
great. Now we're gonna circle back because we started talking about, the things that you do that to kind of make you like you talked about burning a candle and feeling the warmth of that and being able to focus and sort of meditate on that. So talk about like three of the self-care strategies that you do now that help to center and to regulate yourself to kind of keep you in your most zen place.
So I am a total list person. I have a notebook that's just like lists on lists on lists, and I have like one color for things work and then one color for things me. And there's something so good about just like ing a line like right through the middle of it. And
Mm.
just being like, this is something I've accomplished. This is tangible. This is done. On to the next. Um, and I've just found that it really like helps to just organize my mind as well as my days,
Mm.
because then I can visualize it in my head and just be like, okay, after that I had to do this, and after this I wanted to do this next thing, and kind of keep trucking in that way. And yeah, again, there's definitely like catharsis in just like scribbling through it, ripping the page out. Like when I'm done, I'm done. And like rewriting for the next day, having only two like items that I have to carry over instead of staring at like this long mess of thing. And I'm just like, nah.
Yeah.
So I really, really, I'm a notebook and list girl, definitely.
I use my notes in my phone that,
Mhm.
translates to my computer, and, like, when it's all done, I'm like, "Swipe." It's gone.
Yeah. I also, so during the pandemic, I was staying in a railroad apartment in East Harlem, Manhattan. It
Ah,
was a wonderful chapter of my life. The neighborhood was incredible. I like honestly, I have so much love for the area and that experience. And I get to say I lived in a Manhattan apartment for like a hot second. But I'm in Jersey City now. And a big part of that move was now I have a balcony and a backyard, and that allows me to be connected to nature and to
Mhm,
be outside and breathe.
mm.
And growing up in Rockland, like that was never a question. I like my my house growing up was this little old 1900 stone Tudor with like almost an acre of like trees. We can't even say land because it's trees.
It's all trees.
But
Mhm,
that was what I knew. And so, like, being transplanted from that into the city, I realized that just like that disconnection from nature was so noticeable and so draining on me. And there are parks and they can feel immersive, but it's not quite the same.
mhm.
So I love having the option now of like sitting out on my balcony and reading, watching the sunset, or throwing out a blanket in the backyard and hanging out, just breathing and
Grounding too.
exactly.
Mm,
Yeah. Just
yeah.
reconnecting. And that was one of the reasons I fell in love with New Paltz as a town before I heard anything about the school, because I just stepped out there and I was like, this feels right. This feels good.
Mhm.
And it's a little tiny town at the base of this giant mountain. And the hours that I spent on those mountains, man, like they were just some of the most introverted thoughts and development that I was able to do, and some formative years was spent just like me on the mountains, me in the rail trail, just taking it all in and thinking through some stuff.
That's great. I wanna go there. I want to go there. Like,
Do it.
my nephew's actually going, in September. He's, matriculating there as a freshman, so I'm like, "Maybe I'll need to visit my nephew there."
Definitely yes. And if you need any restaurant or activity recommendations, I am your girl, because one of the
Mhm,
best things that I took from New Paltz was this core group of 10 girls
mm.
that we met freshman year. We were joining the same sorority, and literally to this day, we text each other every day. We just had our 10-year meetiversary reunion. We spent a whole like 4 days up in New Paltz, and like someone's in Colorado, someone was on California for a couple of years, but like we still just are together and a part of each other's lives. And it's interesting too, because we're all at very different stages. A couple of people are married, they're ready for kids. Some of us are still figuring things out and ourselves out. And there's just like that sense of like love and stepping right back into it that I think that if we hadn't all met where we were at the point in life where we were, we never would have. And I don't know what I'd do without them. So it's something like really magical in that
Does it
town.
feel like the Thespian connection, the same kind of thing?
I definitely, so I went in there with that same expectation. I joined a sorority instead of joining theater in college, kind of looking for that same found family aspect.
Mhm,
Um, And I have to say that while I love and cherish my sorority and all that it's given me, there was just something different about thespians in the sense that everyone was welcome
mm,
and everyone was able to take the time to find their space. Whereas like with the sororal element, like you're kind of competing to get in a way. It's more selective. There's people saying yay or nay to you joining the org as a whole. Whereas like if you don't make the cast, for example, you can hang around crew or you can do something different and then try again,
Mm,
but you don't have as many opportunities to do so.
right.
So the depth of connections that I made in some ways are definitely comparable,
Mhm.
but just the overall exposure to different people, different personalities, different backgrounds, everyone coming from a different place and having different things to work through and bringing different offerings to the table.
Mm.
That about thespians was like very special and different, which is why even when I was in college, like it meant so much to go back and to like peek in on rehearsals when I had spring break or like try to make the plays when I could, because it did like that special feeling just didn't go away. It was really lovely.
I just love that. I do. Well, we have come to the end of our list of questions. Thank you, La Presidenta, Jessica Butler, for joining me for this time together. I so appreciate it. And I love hearing how well you're doing now because, I know some of, what kids are going through when they're going through it, whatever they choose to share. And I know how hard it was to manage all of that and to see you coming out on the other side, fully formed, still figuring your life out. That happens until you die. So that's okay. But I just love to see that you are doing as well as you're doing and just hearing you talk back about that experience and how important that was to you. That's just everything. That's like everything to a teacher. So thank you so much for that. And everybody, tune in next week for episode 30. Thank you again, and we will see you next time.